In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the brush tool inside of Photoshop. Now, the brush tool can be used for things such as directly painting on a canvas, or you can use it for other tools in Photoshop such as editing in mask mode, or doing things such as highlighting an image and using layer adjustments. So I'll show you the brush tool and all of the different settings that you can use. You'll find it's the 8th icon on the tools bar with the shortcut key B. Now when we click on that tool, you'll see that there are some options at the top. We can change the brush, including the size, the hardness, and we have a whole bunch of different brush templates that we can use. We'll take a look at those in a minute. You can also toggle the brush settings panel on and off, so this will give you a better view of all the options that you can actually change inside of the different brushes. The blending mode, so here we can actually blend differently with this tool. We can adjust the opacity, we can adjust the flow of whenever we're using a tablet, and the smoothing of our strokes, and then we have some other options for using tablets up here. But let's go ahead and take a look at the different settings. So we're going to go and open up the brush settings and the brushes panel over here on the right hand side, because this is actually going to give us the best way to look at all the different options. So the first thing we have is all the different brushes, and here you can see your most recent used brushes and then all the different brushes. So we have soft brushes and hard brushes, we have flat point brushes and flat angled brushes, and all of these different ones here. You can actually add more brushes inside of Photoshop, and you can also save out your own brushes to use inside of Photoshop. We won't get that deep into it, but I will show you that there is a wide range of brushes that you can use. So we have that type here, and then this type does something different. This one looks a little different, and you can see that you can have a wide range of different styles of brushes as you begin working. So we'll go ahead and undo those. So we have the brushes, we have the size, so you can change the brush size. So as you can see, that gets bigger, and then we can make that smaller too. We can change the size directly with the keyboard by using the brackets. So as I move the brackets down, or the left bracket, you see it gets smaller, and as I move the right bracket, you can see it gets bigger. So that allows me to paint with my right hand and then change the brush size quickly with my left hand, so I never have to move my hands around too much to change the brushes. So we'll undo that. Let's take a look at some of the different brush settings that you have here. So on the right hand side, you're going to have all the different brushes that you can select. Now we do have some pre-made brushes like these bristle brushes, and you can see this is a round fan, and it shows you the actual bristles and length, thickness, stiffness, angle. All of that can be changed when you see these kinds of icons. Otherwise, we have a regular circular brush, and here we can change the size, the angle that it draws out, the roundness, the hardness, and so on. So here we have just basically a round brush that'll paint, but then we can adjust things like the spacing, and when we do that, you can see we get a different type of brush. So we'll go ahead and change that back, and then when we pick on a brush like this, you can see that as we begin moving, you see a little icon over here moving around too, and this is useful if you're using a tablet. It will show you pressure sensitivity, and then we have all the different settings that we can adjust here, and as I make these adjustments, you'll see them change in the icon, and then they'll reflect that whenever you begin drawing. So we have a bunch of different pre-made type brushes that we can use here. Not only that, but we have the option to make other adjustments, so we can have things such as shape dynamics. When we turn that on, we can give the brush a jitter, and as you can see, it's changing here in the preview window. So it's a different kind of stroke than when we turn that all the way down and we have a nice smooth line. And there are a lot of settings in here. We won't go through every single one of them, but by going through and adjusting these settings, you can really get some cool effects. So we can have scattering where it will scatter that brush a little more for us. So now we're getting this kind of effect. You can change things like the count and the count jitter whenever you make new ones. We can have a textured brush, so you can actually select a texture, and then that can be applied to the brush whenever you are working with that. It might be kind of hard to see in here, but you can get different kinds of textures that you can use. We have a dual brush setting. Well, we'll probably have to turn off some of these other settings, but we can have dual brushes, so we can change their size and how they scatter, and it's actually painting 2 strokes at one time. Let me see here. I'd have to pick a different brush, but we have that setting, color dynamics, so we can actually change around the way that the colors are working on this brush. Let's turn on, oops, change the foreground and background colors here. Okay, foreground, background, jitter. Okay, so now we can see that happening. Let's turn that scattering back on. So that looks pretty cool. So we can see that we have that color dynamics scattering going on. We have transfer, so we can have opacity transfers. So let's back this out so you can see. So now we can see the opaqueness in some of those circles there. Brush pose, so the way that the actual brush is being laid down, its tilt and rotation might change the way that you actually, when you draw on here. We can introduce noise into the brush. I guess you can just turn that one on or off. Wet edges, which is going to give more of a watercolor kind of feel. If the brush builds up, so if you keep going over the same part, it's going to build up and thicken as if you were painting with actual paints, versus if I just keep going over, it'll thicken a little bit, but it doesn't lay on top like the build up does. And then we have smoothing and protect texture down here. So with all of these different settings, you can obviously get a wide range of brushes to work with. So it doesn't matter if you are using one of the pre-made brushes or you have one of these brushes that you want to use. You can come in here and make all of these changes any way that you want to. And then again, like I said, you can actually come in here and add your own brushes. And if you click on the panel's options, you'll see that there's options to add new brushes, and there's a preset manager. You can import brushes, export brushes, and get more brushes. So there's a ton of different brushes inside of Photoshop and on other sites that you can import and use, such as like things like the grass here. I think I actually got this from somewhere else. So as I begin coloring, it looks like grass is being painted. So this is using some of those color dynamics that you saw earlier. So if we use like a green and maybe like a kind of a tan color here, you'll see we can paint grass using a brush. So there's a lot of different effects. And the last thing that I'll mention is that if you use a tablet, this can be pressure sensitive. So if I pick a brush, let me just pick a standard round brush here. And if I have my tablet here, I'm going to grab my pen, and this is going to give us a lot of control. And not only does it give us more control, because now it's if I'm drawing on here, it gives me more control to be able to see where I'm going and draw exactly where I want to, much easier than a mouse. But a lot of these brushes have pressure sensitivity. So if I turn on the pressure sensitivity here, when I draw very lightly, the brush is nice and small, and as I push down onto the tablet, you see it gets thicker. So having a tablet while using brushes is very beneficial, because it means that as you begin writing and doing things, it's going to change the sizing as if you were really writing on paper or using some type of brush. So you have a lot of different options. Again, it's not just for painting on a canvas, which you can do. I've seen some beautiful artwork with this, but you can also do other things like use a brush to paint in mask mode, and I have all those settings, so I can paint with all the dynamics and all the jitters and spacing, and I can also have that pressure sensitivity on the mask mode. So you have a wide range of things that you can do with the brush tool. It's probably one of the most prominent tools inside of Photoshop that you can use.